So today's session is impact of excessive meat consumption in urban settings. And we have a esteemed speaker, Dr. Sailesh Rao, and a green activist, Ayan Banerjee, with us. So this initiative is a joint initiative by Tears of the Earth under the Crying Species and a partner organization, Swadhya, which is basically about looking at plant-based diet through the lens of science. And we believe in taking first step towards cleaner diet. The Green Switch aims to empower individuals with the right tools to switch over a greener and sustainable food choice. Also, there will be feedback forms provided at the end of session, 15 minutes. So make sure to take that and fill the form. Because your certificates will be provided based on you taking up that feedback form. Also, there will be a poll in between, so make sure you look out for that. And I will urge you to write question in chat box below so that we can actually have them in time for our speakers to answer. So yeah, moving on. Tears, I'll give you a detailed little bit brief about our organization, Tears of the Earth. So our organization works for environmental conservation, awareness, and highlights how we as individuals can contribute towards the betterment of society. And we are a team of really passionate people who are trying to help our cause. So the main agenda of organization is to spread environmental awareness, to save environment basically. And we have different initiatives like Sing to Save, which is good for entertainers and artists who have a way through entertainment to get a message across. There is also TEAI, which is a sign in environment and space cross section. There is also Earthlink Council, which we basically establish in different schools and colleges. And there's also Savior, which is basically all the groundwork we do from cleanliness drive, from plantation drives, public awareness surveys, things like that. Now moving on to our partners, organizing partner Swadhya. It is a youth-led, change-oriented collective which aims to promote environmental conservation, right promotion, inclusive education, and justice for all. So at Swadhya, we work towards creating a resilient global network of young people working at grassroots level so that our fight against issues like climate change does not remain isolated and become a part of a larger global movement. So they have projects like Project Planet Heroes, Advocacy for Transgender Rights, Youth Activist Campaign. Moving on, the Crying Species, which is an initiative by Tears of the Earth, which also goes by the motto Care for Our Caretakers, basically providing awareness, help, shelter, and food for animals. This is a newer initiative that we are considering today, the Green Switch, which is a relatively newer initiative by Tears of the Earth, which aims to look at the current climate crisis through the lens of dietary choices and food practices. And in this session, we'll be able to get this, hopefully get this message across, which is basically about help youth or people in general make informed dietary decisions and aim to enlighten the youth about the impact of our dietary choices. Can we have a, now next up we'll have a video.
Imagine California in 2040. The kind of weather that leads to extreme fires is 20% more common than it is today. In central Texas, corn and soybean crop yields are down by more than 2/3. Hurricanes continue to ravage southern Louisiana, and more than 40 days a year are too hot and humid to work outside or exercise safely.
It turns out what we put on our plates matters a lot.
About 25% of all the global climate change problems we're seeing can be attributed back to the food and the choices that we're actually making about what we eat on a daily basis.
So take that grass-fed ribeye steak I love. If you really look at everything that went into making a single serving of beef, you end up emitting around 330 grams of carbon. That's like driving a car 3 miles. Now, if I choose to have chicken instead, there's more than a 5-fold drop in emissions. Switch to fish, and you see the number go down even more. Now, look at veggies. If I swapped beef out entirely for lentils, well, I'm down to practically nothing. So why does beef, and lamb too for that matter, pack such a powerful punch to the planet? Livestock accounts for a little over 14% of global greenhouse gas emissions. If that sort of seems low to you, consider it's about equal to transportation. We're talking all the cars, trucks, planes, trains, and ships on the planet combined. The methane they produce is at least 25 times more potent than carbon dioxide. Plus, it takes a lot of land, fertilizer, and about 1 billion tons of grain to feed all that livestock.
And you could feed 3.5 billion people with that grain. If we were just directly eating these grains ourselves, it would eliminate a lot of the CO2 that's emitted from California.
When it comes to global warming, this is beef. When you only account for the emissions that go into the processing, transportation, packaging, and selling of a food product, the difference between these foods isn't so great. When you add the emissions from growing and processing food for livestock, you can see that animal products have higher emissions than vegetables. But the real gap comes from these two factors: the emissions associated with the farming process and the impact of land use change. Coffee has such a big footprint because of the fertilizers farmers use to grow it, which emit a lot of the greenhouse gas nitrous oxide. The farming process also accounts for most of the disparity between cow and sheep products and everything else.
Really? That was rude, sir.
Jokes aside, though, methane is a huge contributor to climate change. It's the second most emitted greenhouse gas after carbon dioxide. But it traps more heat than carbon dioxide. Its global warming potential over 100 years is 21 times higher. Among human-related activities, enteric fermentation is the biggest contributor to methane emissions globally, more so even than the methane emissions from burning fossil fuels. And it's a big reason why the farming process-related emissions for beef and sheep are so high. The second reason is land use change. Starting in the 1700s, the amount of land developed for humanity's purposes started to skyrocket. Only a tiny amount of this is due to our built environment, like cities, towns, and other infrastructure. A vast majority is for agriculture. And when you divide that up, you see that land for grazing animals far surpasses land for growing crops. Converting all that land to farms to make way for grazing or growing crops releases the carbon that was once stored in trees, other plants, and the soil. By contrast, nuts and citrus fruit and olive oil have negative land use emissions because planting nut and citrus fruit and olive trees is reforesting cropland. And grazing animals take up a lot of space compared to crops. 80% of deforestation in the Amazon rainforest, for example, is to make way for cattle ranching. This is how many tons of greenhouse gases per capita we emit through all of our activities. Changing our diet to exclude high-emission foods has the potential to reduce it by 28%, by both reducing emissions and reforesting land.
This would free up vast quantities of land. About 33 million square kilometers of land are used for pasture, an area about the size of Africa. And that's not even counting the land used to grow crops exclusively for animal feed. Some of it would be needed for the increased amount of vegetable crops, but much of the land currently used as pasture is actually too dry to grow crops. Without humans adding artificial nutrients, this land could turn to desert, but if properly managed, it's possible that some farmland would return to its natural state of grassland or forest, which could help counteract global climate change. After all, the loss of CO2 absorbing trees cleared for agriculture is a major reason why global levels of CO2 are going up.
So I hope this video is able to illustrate the challenges and the issues that we are going to discuss in this webinar. So moving forward, I like to introduce Dr. Shailesh Rao. Dr. Shailesh Rao is the founder and executive director of Climate Healer and a non-profit dedicated to healing the earth climate. And he is a systems specialist with a PhD in electrical engineering from Stanford University. Dr. Rao worked on internet communication infrastructure for 20 years. During his period, he blazed the trail for high-speed signal processing chips, technologies for high-definition television, and real-time video communication, and the transformation of early analog internet connection to more robust digital connection while accelerating their speed to tenfold. He is a receiver of numerous awards, namely the Exceptional Contributor Awards for AT&T Bell Laboratories between 1985 and 1991, a Distinguished Member of Technical Staff Award in 1990, the Intel Principal Engineering Award in 2003, and the IIT Madras Distinguished Eminence Award in 2013 for his technical contribution. He is author of 22 peer-reviewed technical papers, 50 standard contribution, 10 US patents, and 3 Canadian patents. So in 2006, he switched career and became deeply immersed full-time in solving environmental crises affecting humanity and environment. Dr. Rao is also author of 2 books, which is Carbon Dharma, The Occupation of Butterflies in Carbon Yoga, The Vegan Metamorphosis, and executive producer of 4 documentaries, which are The Human Experiment, Cowspiracy, The Sustainability Secret, What the Health, A Prayer for Compassion. So I would like to call over Dr. Rao to speak on the topic. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Let me see. How do I share here?
So there is an option of present now, just
okay.
to the right of raise hand.
So I'm going to talk about the impact of meat consumption in urban setting, or I call it Meet the Meatocracy, which is a short book that we wrote, and it's on our website, so you can take a look at it. It's climatehealers.org. Look under books and you will see Meet the Meatocracy. And that basically goes through the details about what I'm going to show you today. So we are from India, and from India we know about direct colonialism. When the British came and they made us do things that we don't want to do and colonized the country. Colonialism is the idea that one group of people can come and tell other groups of people how to live their lives and basically extract resources from them in the process. Okay. So that is direct colonialism, and we know it ended in 1947. But what I want to talk to you now about is the indirect colonialism that has continued beyond then. Okay. So think about Operation Flood that happened in 1970. What did Operation Flood do? It allowed people in the villages to stand in line with their milk and sell their milk and get cash, immediately. And then the milk was then collected, pasteurized, and shipped in trucks, in lorries, in refrigerated lorries to urban settings. So the demand for milk came from urban settings, and the extraction of the biomass of the forests in order to create milk happened in rural settings. So you ask, how did this even start? Because this was 1970, okay, when Operation Flood was started. And the funding for Operation Flood came from the European Economic Commission. The European Economic Commission and the World Food Program were the ones who funded it. So they gave a loan to India to create this. And they gave the know-how how to do it. Why milk in India? Why are we increasing the milk consumption in India? If you look at the population of the world, you will notice that the global south is pretty much lactose, what they call lactose intolerant. It's really lactose normal. You're normal if you cannot digest lactose as an adult because you're not supposed to. Okay? It's only the Europeans who have a genetic predisposition to digest lactose. So they are the ones who are consuming dairy. Okay? And so it is the Europeans who are now trying to convince the rest of the world to consume dairy, even though we cannot even digest it. In fact, India is 40 to 60% or 60 to 80%, somewhere in that region. Okay? So around 60% of Indians cannot digest lactose. And yet milk was pushed on us. I was one of those children who grew up in the 60s. And I was made to consume milk too. I was told it's good for you and so on and so forth. And I really got sick, but I didn't even know it was because of the milk. It's only after I went vegan in 2008 that I realized it was my milk consumption that had caused all of my health problems. Okay, and they went away. So I am one of those lactose normal children, but I was made to consume dairy. So why was dairy being pushed on India? And you'll see it is Prince Charles is now here, examining the dairy production facilities. So it is basically indirect European colonialism. Yeah, because what happens is colonialism was about extracting resources from the colonies and enriching the mother countries. And I'll show you how that happens through food. Okay. So you convince people to consume a lot of animal foods, okay, and in urban settings, and then that creates a demand for people to extract biomass from rural settings, convert the biomass into dairy and meat, and sell it. So then as the biomass gets removed from the forest, it is being turned into cash. Okay? It's been turned into money. Okay? And what the Europeans do, or what the West has done, is to is to tell everyone in the world that the only way they can buy oil is with dollars. So you need to have dollars, otherwise you cannot buy oil. And if you cannot buy oil, you don't have an industrial civilization. So it's fossil fuels, okay, that drives us to go and figure out how to get foreign exchange. So then they tell you, if you want foreign exchange, sell us beef. Because there's a lot of consumption of animal foods happening high up in the economic ladder. Okay, so sell us beef. Well, we don't eat beef in India, so they convince us to consume dairy. So when you consume dairy, you have lots of cows. And then now India is one of the second largest exporters of beef in the world, right? And that is the largest source of foreign exchange for India. So you're stuck. And you need that foreign exchange because we have to buy oil. So this is called indirect colonialism. And colonialism and carnism go hand in hand. So consumption of animal foods is how we convince people to turn their resources, their forests, their biomass into cash. Consumption of animal foods is central to colonialism. Okay? So carnism is central to colonialism. And if you think about how the Fertile Crescent which used to be all of Africa, Middle East, that was called the Fertile Crescent. That's the cradle of civilization. And look at what it is now. It's pretty much a desert. The desert is now growing. The desert starts at the western edge of Africa. It goes all the way into India. It becomes the Thar Desert, goes all the way into China and becomes the Gobi Desert. And in India, it's now expanding. Okay. So if you look at what's happening in Rajasthan, India, the edge of the Thar Desert, I went there in 2007 to study how it's happening. And basically, the people were told, if you want cash, okay, and if you want cash, why? Because we are showing them cell phones. And we are asking them, do you want the cell phone? And they all say, of course we want cell phones. Because I can see myself here on this phone. So these poor villagers, they used to live a normal life in the forest, okay, until we got there and showed them all these devices, convinced them that they needed it. And then they ask, how do we buy this stuff? How do we get the cell phone? We tell them, well, you need money to buy cell phones. And how do we get money? Raise some cows or goats, sell us the meat, and then we'll give you money. So the only source of cash in the villages is animal husbandry. And then we give them loans. We'll give you loans to buy goats because we know that you can graze the goats and then sell the goats and make money and give us back the money that we gave you as loans, right? So there are banks that go off to villages and convince villagers to take out loans so that they can earn money. This is how we colonize the villages and convert all of their biomass into cash and suck it out from them. And eventually they become really poor because there is nothing growing around them. And then they come into the cities and they stay in the slums and they become cheap labor for the industrial civilization. So you can see this happening, but you can also see the reversal happening. So here is land in Rajasthan, in Karech, the village of Karech, that got fenced in 2002 with a stone fence so that the cows and the goats could not go in there. Okay. And see how barren it is? By 2006, it became this. So India, fortunately, still has the monsoons, still has fertile soil, still hasn't been messed up with chemicals to a large extent. And therefore, the forest is ready to come back. Nature always likes to heal. Our body heals if we just leave it alone. The best we need to do is maybe put a Band-Aid on your wound and leave it alone, your body heals. Similarly, the earth will heal if we just remediate, remove the chemical pollution and let it regenerate. So I saw this fence in 2008, and I could see to the right of it, lush green forest, and to the left, I could see all these old cows walking around eating anything new that's growing on the ground, and anything old in the trees were being cut and burnt for firewood. So it was literally turning into desert to the left of this fence. So, and I saw all these old cows walking around. I realized that it was my consumption of dairy that was causing the forest to die. So I went vegan on the spot, okay, in 2008. And that is the best that any urban dweller can do to address colonialism, to address the biodiversity loss that's happening on the planet. Because if you think about it, the entire colonial game is still going on. It is still going on. We were all lied to and told India got independence. So-and-so got independence. Think about it. In the 40s and 50s, whole bunch of countries got independence. So did the colonial masters suddenly decide that they're going to be benevolent to everybody? No, this is not how things work. Okay, what happened was they figured out how to implement colonialism without direct control through the monetary system. And in fact, the entire world is colonized. I mean, including Great Britain, including UK, including USA. Okay, people of the West are also colonized. So it's not that the West, UK is coming and colonizing other. It's just a few people within UK who are colonizing the entire world. Okay, so you understand that by looking at who owns all these big companies. See, if you look at the board and if you look at the preferred shareholders of all these big companies, you will see the same 4 financial holding companies as major stockholders. And the major stockholders are Fidelity, Vanguard, State Street, and BlackRock. And they own major shares in every one of these big companies. Okay. And if you try to figure out who owns Fidelity, Vanguard, BlackRock, and State Street, they are all private holding companies. They don't have to disclose their shareholders. So we don't even know who they are. Okay, but we have an idea. We have an idea. So there have been books written about who really owns these 4 financial holding companies. There's a book by Carol Quigley from the 60s, and then the Canadian finance minister wrote a book about it as well. So it's roughly about 50 families that own the entire world. Why? Because they own the currency generating mechanism. So they generate currency in the form of loans, and they make the rest of us do things on the planet in order to return the loans that we got. Okay? So this is how the colonialism works. It's a top-down money flow in the game. And the way the money is created is always in the form of loans. That's how new money is created. Okay? So if you go deposit, say 100 rupees in a bank, I guess these days 100 rupees is nothing, right? So let's say $100 in the bank. The bank only has to keep $10 as reserves, okay? And it can loan out the remainder $90. When it loans it out, it tells the person who borrowed, you have to return the $90 I gave you, plus you have to give me back interest. So you have to go and do things in order to get the interest. Okay, you have to go and work to get the interest. And that $90, if the person comes and puts it back in the bank only keeps $9 and loans out another $81. So this is how from the original $100, it generates $900 in extra money out of thin air. Okay. And it's always in the form of loans. And if you, for some reason, cannot return the loans, who does the police come after? You are the bank. No one says, society doesn't say, oh, poor fellow, he had a bad drought and therefore he couldn't return his loan. So let's forgive the loan. No. You have to hawk your land. You have to do everything in your power to return that loan. And the state enforces it. Okay. So this is how colonialism is a state-enforced enterprise. It's a top-down money flow, always in the form of loans. And through the money flow, you colonize the whole world. So I call this the global ecological Ponzi scheme. Actually, I didn't come up with the name. The name was coined by Paul Ehrlich at Stanford. He called the economy is a global ecological Ponzi scheme. What is a Ponzi scheme? It's a pyramid scheme in which people at the very top have figured out how to make the rest of us do things for them. Okay, and the only way this Ponzi scheme will work is if it keeps growing. This is how all Ponzi schemes work. This is how all pyramid schemes work. It has to keep growing. Okay, multi-level marketing. If it doesn't grow, the whole thing collapses. Okay, now you look at who's at the bottom of this Ponzi scheme. Who is supplying all this? And how do we grow it? To grow it, you monetize the entire world, monetize everything. And so animals become money. Animals become just objects that can be monetized. And the plants and trees become objects that can be monetized. And by monetizing everything, we are literally making money out of death, disease, and destruction. Death for the animals, diseases for human beings, and destruction for the planet. And so through that mechanism, we have endangered life on Earth. And this growth formula works by addicting everyone into compulsive behaviors. You need to addict people into eating things that that's not really good for them, or, constantly buying things. So you have to addict everyone into compulsive behaviors. And then we lie to ourselves. We lie about the protein myth. We tell people you need to eat this, otherwise you won't have any protein in your body. You're going to just wither away and die if you don't eat animal foods. The calcium myth. I mean, look, if you eat enough calories, you will get enough protein, you will get enough calcium, okay? We know that. It's scientifically shown. If you eat enough calories, it's almost impossible to eat enough calories and not get enough protein. And yet they tell you if you don't eat meat, you'll never get your protein. That's a lie. And it's there in every textbook. So our textbooks are filled with lies. And then the object of the game is to steal from the poor to enrich the rich. And this is how it works. I went to a supermarket here in the US and I bought organic basmati rice for $2 a pound. And I traced it. I went back and figured out a village in Orissa where the rice came from. And then I went and asked the villagers, how much did you get paid for that rice? And it turned out she was getting about 5 cents a pound for the same rice. So what happened in between? I mean, this is not like someone took the rice from her and processed it. No, she had to pay for the processing as well. Okay. So she got 5 cents per pound after processing everything and giving it to the middleman. So what happened to the rest? This is called profit. So this is how you take the labor from the bottom and you use it to enrich people at the top. And it's not because, we need to use all this money for transporting the rice from Orissa to the US. No. That hardly costs as much. Okay? It doesn't cost so much. If you look at donations to charity, they insist when you donate $2 to charity, that $1.80 gets to the recipient. So we know how to do this. We know how to take resources from the top and move it to the bottom with just 10% overhead. But on the way up, you have this huge profit-making enterprise. Okay, this is called colonialism. This is how it works. It's a global ecological Ponzi scheme. It's enriching the rich at the expense of the poor.
From street stalls to fine dining to home food, vegetarianism has traditionally dominated Indian kitchens. Many, like the merchant family, refuse to bring meat into their homes.
It was predominantly a vegetarian home. There was a time when even eggs were not allowed.
All of that is changing with the changing India, the politics, the culture. Indians are earning more, traveling more, and acquiring a taste for new foods.
So I eat chicken, I eat seafood, I've eaten rabbit before.
Top of the list in India, chicken. In fact, India is now one of the top chicken consumers in the world. So actor Perizad Zorabian put her film career on hold to focus on her family's premium chicken business instead.
Business has boomed. We're growing larger and larger, as the day comes.
She says there are many reasons Indians are turning into non-vegetarians.
I think it's the whole health wave and the health conscious wave that's hit the new generation.
100 grams of chicken gives you much more protein than a cup of cooked lentils. Plus, India's middle class is growing and the average Indian's spending power has increased. When that happens, people typically buy more non-vegetarian items.
And because there are so many players in the market now the market prices, haven't really shot the roof. So chicken is really, really affordable.
Indians are consuming a lot more chicken than ever before, but not necessarily at home. Many of them are closet non-vegetarians. That means they eat meat only outside the home, just like Nikhil Merchant. Bringing it home would upset his father, who said this when he found out Nikhil had tasted chicken.
We really need to, indulge in something and turn into a carnivore. So I'm like, no, it's, it's part of my life.
And it's become part of many Indians' lives, especially the youth who frequent fast food chains. Many refuse to talk about eating burgers and nuggets on camera because their families don't know their secret. there are still cultural taboos on partaking. In India, everything isn't what you think it might be. Sometimes. Malika Kapoor, CNN, Mumbai.
So we are being lied. Okay, so that they manipulated us into eating more and more animal foods. In fact, it's worldwide. They manipulate us to eat more and more animal foods. And you will see the West sending their McDonald's and their Pizza Huts to convince us to eat their food as opposed to eating our traditional foods. If you go to the villages of India, they're still eating dal chawal and roti sabji. Okay, most of the villagers are still eating traditional foods. And if you really want to save the planet, you need to make sure that dal chawal and roti sabji is eaten by everybody instead of the other way around. Instead of taking the European foods and making sure that everybody eats that, which is what we are doing now. If you look at the rate at which wild animals are dying on this planet, between 1970 and 2010, we wiped out 52% of all wild vertebrates by weight. Okay, the total weight of wild animals declined by 52% between 1970 and 2010. And that was reported in the Living Planet report of 2014. In the Living Planet report of 2016, that number went down to 58%, went up to 58%. So decline, see, another 6% declined in just 2 years. So at that rate, we are on track to wipe out almost all wild animals by 2026. So what are we really doing? We are turning the bodies of these wild animals into cash and sending it up to a few people at the very top. That's the game we are playing right now. So by 2020, LPI 2020, that had become 68%. So we are on track to wipe out almost all wild animals on this planet by 2026. So this is why I have started a Vegan World 2026 project. I want the whole world to be vegan by 2026 so that we create a momentum in the other direction and save the wild animals. And right now, because of climate change and biodiversity loss, mainly because of biodiversity loss, a global transformation is inevitable. So there was an article in 2021 by a whole bunch of scientists talking about how we are underestimating the challenges of avoiding a ghastly future. If we continue doing what we are doing, we know exactly where we are headed. We are headed for disaster, okay? And if disaster is driven by the pervasive human-driven decline of life. That is the leading indicator of the disaster. So that is what's pointing to the need for transformative change.
Americans love sausage and bacon. We consider it almost a civil right to have access to abundant, low-cost protein supplies.
Some of the same factors that make the meat supply chain so efficient and profitable are also helping fuel devastating outbreaks of the novel coronavirus. And according to the US's largest supplier, that supply chain is breaking.
More meat processing plants in the Midwest are closing, and that could impact our food supply.
There are growing concerns about food shortages.
So far, over 10,000 workers have been infected or exposed to COVID-19, and at least 30 have died.
Our members are getting sick and they're dying.
Worker safety and health in this pandemic is really in crisis.
A lot of us are getting scared, knowing that if we didn't show up for work, we might not have a job.
An executive order signed by President Trump declares meat processing plants as critical infrastructure.
If the administration wants to protect the food chain, what they really need to do is to protect the health and safety of the workers in that industry.
If American consumers are to continue to enjoy cheap and plentiful meat, processing companies will have to navigate a fragile balance of safety and supply.
So that is the reality, okay? So if we continue, we are actually sacrificing not just the animals, but also the bodies of these workers. They're going to die just so that we can eat meat. And why are we doing that? Because we have been convinced that you really need this. You need to grow the economy. In fact, if you look at all the UN Sustainable Development Goals, you will notice there's goal number 1, no poverty, 0 hunger, good health and well-being. Who can argue with any of this? This is great, right? Quality education, gender equality. And then they suddenly stuck in goal number 8, economic growth. And you ask yourself, hey, wait a minute. Why do I need economic growth if I have met 0 hunger, if I have good health and well-being? Do I really need to grow the economy? Who the hell cares whether the economy is growing or not? So long as I have 0 hunger and no poverty and good health and well-being, that's just a number that we are growing. But do you know why they put that in there? They put that in there so that they can deceive us into thinking that they're addressing all the other goals, even though the only thing they're really doing is addressing goal number 8. So they focus on economic growth and they tell you, by just growing the economy, we'll meet all the other goals. Okay, so don't worry about the rest. So the focus of all governments is on economic growth. Why? Because they're trying to keep the Ponzi scheme going. That is the primary goal of the colonial masters. Colonial masters don't want to suddenly just collapse and then discover that they are just ordinary people like anybody else. Okay? That is their greatest nightmare. Okay? And our entire civilization is based on 2 false axioms. An axiom is something that we take for granted as the truth, when in reality it is actually false. So the first, and you'll notice that this is an axiom because you see it all around you. The false axiom of consumerism, which is that the pursuit of happiness is best accomplished by stoking and satisfying a never-ending series of latent desires. And you see that in all the ads around you. They're trying to convince you, do this, buy this, get this, and only then will you be happy. This is what I call the greed is good rule. And we have, in Indian culture, we have always been taught that this is false. Think of all our epics. Ramayana, Mahabharata. What is that? Ramayana is, you've got this 10-headed Ravana, right? And every time we chop off a head, a new head is born. He represents desires. And what they're telling us is that if you follow desires, you are going to be suffering, okay? So you will eventually die. So we know that the greed is good rule is false. Worldwide, we know this. And yet, we have bought into it. So we're actually behaving like zombies, okay? Following the herd. Second is the false axiom of supremacism, which is the might is right rule, which is that life is a competitive game in which those who have gained an advantage may possess, enslave, and exploit animals, nature, and the disadvantaged for their pursuit of happiness. So it's not just animals. So the animals are at the very bottom, okay? And everybody exploits them. And then you get exploited because you happen to have a different skin, or you happen to be a different gender. You get exploited by someone else, because this entire game is based on might is right. So whoever has the most money determines what the others do. So by having this unequal distribution of money and creating this flow from the bottom to the top, we make sure that this false axiom is maintained. So the might is right rule. We know this is not true either. Okay, we know that might is not right. We know that if you want life to thrive on this planet, we need to let go of this. There is no such thing as supremacism. You're not superior to anybody. You're not superior to the bacteria that's around you. A little virus is going to, has more power over you than yourself. So to implement these 2 false axioms, we have created 2 industrial machines of doom. One is the burning machine, so basically fossil fuels in industry, which is implementing the false axiom of consumerism. So that's where all the fossil fuel burning happens, to provide us goods so we can buy things. The second is the killing machine, which kills more animals in 4 to 12 hours than all the humans that ever died in wars throughout human history put together. So this is a frenzied killing machine. That's just killing through animal agriculture and fishing. And this implements the false axiom of supremacism. Okay, so we take it for granted that there is someone there who's going to be killing chicken for us, or killing the cow, or exploiting the cow, and so on. That's what the killing machine is doing, or burning down a forest. Okay. Meanwhile, we use scientists to misdirect public attention. So this lying and repurposing and marketing is going on throughout. Okay? So you need to open your eyes to see what's really going on. If you look at the paper from 2017, Campbell et al., they pointed out that there are so many planetary boundaries that we are exceeding. Genetic diversity, we are losing like 1,000 times as many species as we need to. And majority of that is caused by animal agriculture, which is the black dots here, okay? The impact of agriculture is shown in black dots. So you'll see that agriculture is causing most of our environmental problems, most of it, except for climate change. See, they show that agriculture is just a small part of climate change. So it's not the killing machine, it's the burning machine. That's what they're trying to tell us. And they're trying to tell us a story that the environmental problems are mainly because of climate change. Forget the rest. Even though we are losing wild animals so fast, we're on track to wipe them all out by 2026, nobody knows it. Okay? It hardly makes the news. But the news is full of climate change. Why? Because they're telling us that the leading cause of climate change is the burning machine. And what we need to do there is not change the false axiom of consumerism, but to change the fuel for the burning machine. Change it from fossil fuels to solar energy, and we can continue consuming like crazy. Okay, so we can continue the growth mechanism. Why? Because the primary objective of the colonial enterprise is to maintain the colonial enterprise. So that's why it is being framed this way, that agriculture is not the leading cause of climate change. So I did an analysis as an engineer would. Okay, as an engineer, I'm looking at the entire problem, and as a systems engineer, I know how to assign responsibilities. So this way, I know where to direct my effort at solutions. And it turns out that if you look at it closely, the land use is one of the leading causes of climate change. Because land use has been happening. Land use changes have been happening for 10,000 years. So, but if you look at the IPCC, they only start counting from 1750 onwards. And you say, why did they start counting it from 1750 onwards? Why? Because if you start from 10,000 years ago, animal agriculture becomes the leading cause of climate change. It's not fossil fuels, because we have been burning down forests for 10,000 years and we haven't yet accounted for it. Okay? When you started 1750. So if you look at the land use, you'll notice that 43% of the land is used to produce animal foods. Okay, so this is for cropland, and then there is grazing land, 37%. So 43% is used to produce animal foods, and they're only producing 12% of the foods by weight, by dry weight. Only 12% of the food comes from animals. 3% comes from the ocean. Okay, so to get 3% of our food from the ocean, we are actually destroying the entire ocean. 85% of our food worldwide is already plant-based. So in fact, if you just imagine a world in which almost 100% of our food comes from plant sources, all this land can be returned back to forests. So there is an opportunity cost of land use. There's an opportunity cost of eating animals. So every day we eat animals, we are actually saying to the world, to the earth, don't heal. I'm not going to let you heal. I'd rather that you remain, desertified so that I can eat my meat. Whereas if we all choose to go plant-based completely, you're going to return all that land back to nature, and the nature will start planting its own trees, its own forests will come back. It's already doing it, by the way. Okay? Huge amounts of CO2 are being sequestered in trees if we just leave land alone. So you have to count that as an opportunity cost, because the difference between choice of eating animal foods and the choice of eating plant foods is that you either have trees or you don't have trees. And there is an opportunity. There's a CO2 opportunity there. And if you take that into account, it turns out that 87%, at least 87% of greenhouse gas emissions comes from animal agriculture. And it is the leading cause of climate change. When you take into account the opportunity cost, and you take into account the fact that we have been destroying forests on this planet for 10,000 years, and fossil fuels we've only been using since 1750. So this is why we formulated the climate bathtub problem challenge. So to help people understand how do we turn these machines off? Okay, how do we shut the machines off so that we can solve climate change? So what's happening in climate change is that we have added about 1,000 gigatons of CO2 to the atmosphere. Okay, so that's like adding 1,000 liters of water to the climate bathtub. So imagine a climate bathtub and there's a baby there, and the baby is going to drown if the bathtub fills up, and you cannot take the baby out because the baby represents all life on Earth. Okay, you can't take the baby out of the bathtub. Now, the bathtub is filling up. It's filled up with 1,000 liters of water. It's filling up with 35 liters per minute from the burning machine faucet and 15 liters per minute from the killing machine faucet. So you can see the killing machine is actually less than the burning machine. Therefore, we need to focus on the burning machine. But hello, wait a minute. There are other things going on here. When you turn off the burning machine faucet, you actually are going to empty this aerosol cistern. It's like an overhead tank. It's going to empty into the bathtub. So if you turn it off completely, then all 350 liters is going to empty into the bathtub and the baby will drown. Because I'm saying the baby is going to drown, is already having trouble breathing, and will most definitely drown if the climate bathtub has 1,200 liters of water. Okay? So you really cannot shut this off entirely because this aerosol cistern is connected to the burning machine faucet. You have to be careful when you turn it off. Yeah. So, but the killing machine faucet, it turns out that there is nothing that does not improve when you shut off the killing machine. So when you shut this off, you will turn off this 15 liters per minute, and simultaneously you're going to open the drain. And this is the opportunity cost of animal agriculture. Okay, you'll open this drain from the bathtub so that this bathtub can drain into this septic tank. And this is the vegan reforestation potential of 2,000 liters of water. That's how much CO2, 2,000 gigatons of CO2 that you can sequester in forests if the whole world goes vegan. So when you shut off the killing machine, you'll notice that you're going to reduce the flow into the bathtub from 50 liters per minute to 5 liters per minute. Because when you shut it off, this will go away to 0. And you're going to open this and 30 liters is going to flow into the bathtub, which means 35 liters coming in and 30 liters going out. It becomes 5 liters per minute. So from 50 liters, it goes down to 5 liters. And that's where the 90% comes from, 87% comes from, okay? And you can read details in my paper. So as a plumber, how would you solve climate change? How would you save the baby in the bathtub? If you don't turn off the killing machine as soon as possible, you're not a competent plumber. You're going to become an incompetent plumber. So turn off the killing machine, and then you need to figure out how to lower this so that the aerosol cistern can be managed, okay, as the bathtub drains. So anyway, we have issued a problem challenge. We have asked educational institutions to send us their solutions. This is a simple differential equations problem, so you can solve it. Send us the solutions and we'll give you prizes. So you can look up climatehealers.org/bathtub to see more details. So to solve problems, to solve things, you never change things by fighting the existing reality. You're not going to decolonize by going and fighting the colonial masters and making them, change their minds. They're never going to change their minds, okay? Because this is the way it is. This is the way it's always been. So you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. The current model is based on false axioms. It's like saying, the sun goes around the earth. If you keep believing that the sun goes around the earth, you can never build anything you can never go to the moon, for instance, because your calculations will be all wrong. In the same way, you will never get to a sustainable civilization if you base it on the same false axioms. Okay? So you have to base it on the correct axioms. Sustainability is about an infinite game, a game that we can play forever. Whereas colonialism is a finite game because there's only a finite amount of planet beyond which there are no more riches to extract and send to our colonial masters. We are done. Okay. So the true axiom of inner peace which is that the pursuit of happiness is best accomplished by seeking it within ourselves, which is what I call the self-mastery rule. So you need to base sustainability on the true axiom of inner peace and the true axiom of Homo Ahimsa, which is that all life is one family where we each bring our unique skills to give all we can, receive all we need, and become all we are, which is the vitality code rule of Shelley Ostroff. Okay, and Homo Ahimsa is a term that Judy Carman came up with. So, I mean, I have to, I didn't say this in the beginning, but so to get to a sustainable world, we need to base it on the correct axioms. The correct axioms are the foundations on which sustainable civilizations are built. And so instead of the false axiom of consumerism, we have the true axiom of inner peace, which is that the pursuit of happiness is best accomplished by seeking it within ourselves, which is what I call the self-mastery rule. Next slide. And then instead of the false axiom of supremacism, this is the true axiom of Homo Ahimsa. Homo Ahimsa is a term that Judy Carman coined in her book, Peace to All Beings, where she talked about how we are going to have to change our character and our relationship with animals, okay, with all life. So we need to see treat all life as one family, where we each bring our unique skills to give all we can, receive all we need, and become all we are, which is what Dr. Shelley Ostroff calls as the vitality code of life. This is how all life functions, actually. So we need to start becoming, part of life. Okay? So this is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. This is real. Okay, we need to treat it as real. All life is one family. Okay, next slide. And so the analogy is that, in nature, every species belongs exactly as it is. And so we also belong exactly as we are. We have gone through the growth phase in which we have now realized our own power as a species. So we have the power to actually change the climate of the planet. That's an incredibly powerful species. But once you recognize that we are changing the climate of the planet, we have the responsibility to maintain it. That's our job. So we now have to grow up. We need to metamorphosize from a caterpillar growth phase to a butterfly phase where we are serving other life, because it's our job to maintain the climate of the planet. All the other animals are looking to us to maintain that, so that life can thrive again. Okay, life can thrive without ever having to go back to another ice age again. Okay, so we now have to assume that role and get into the butterfly phase. Next slide. And it turns out that it's actually a simple thing to do. Okay, so it requires a cultural shift from our current system of normalized violence to a system of normal non-violence, which is actually, foundational to India. Ahimsa is it's in our genes. We were born with it. Okay, ahimsa. And currently in the global industrial civilization, we play competitive finite games. Think about every game we play, whether it's cricket or soccer or whatever. We kick around the skin of animals. We make a ball out of the skin of animals and we beat it with a bat, or we kick it around with our foot. Okay, so it's showing our dominance. Okay, all the games we play are finite competitive games of showing our dominance over other life. We need to now change those to collaborative infinite games, because that's what sustainability is. You're playing an infinite game. We are here forever. It's not about finding who's the winner and all the rest are losers. Okay? So it's about changing our character from a predator species to a caretaker species, because we now are playing a game where we are the predator species. We are the top predator on the planet. So we are killing more animals in 4 to 12 hours than all the humans that ever died in wars throughout human history put together. Okay, so But now we have to transform to a caretaker species. Otherwise, we're going to kill everything and we're going to die too. So that's the other option we have. And that's transitioning from Homo sapiens sapiens. We call ourselves Homo sapiens sapiens, which is the wise hominid. Okay? And I've never really met a truly wise person going around saying, I'm wise, and that too twice. It is actually a narcissistic predator who goes around saying that. Okay? It's a narcissistic predatory taker species that can say that. Instead, we have to call ourselves Homo ahimsa, and which describes our character, not our characteristic. And that's a combination of a Latin word and a Sanskrit word. So it symbolizes us coming together as a species from around the world in order to fulfill our responsibilities. And the civilizational shifts are from speciesism, colonialism, racism, ableism, patriarchy, which is the domination oppression paradigm, to veganism and radical sacredness, which is the ahimsa sacred relationships paradigm. Okay? From diseases and divisiveness for humanity to health and harmony in diversity for humanity. From destruction and exploitation of the planet to regeneration and caretaking of the planet. From violence and cruelty to animals to kindness and compassion for animals. From an egocentric culture of consumerism to an ecocentric culture of accountability. Okay? We are responsible for maintaining the climate of the planet, so we have to hold ourselves accountable to that. And from a mindset of scarcity to a mindset of generosity, because we have plenty. Compared to other species, we are so far off, so well off, right? Other species are struggling to thrive, struggling to survive, actually. And from a profit-driven economy, we need to create a service-driven economy. Now, the good news is that everything on the left-hand side of this is happening because of the game of money. The way we have constructed the game of money and the rules of the game of money, we have given all the power to a few people to create money. So we have set up the game for the caterpillar. Okay. So now by just changing the game of money, which is a simple switch, and we can design a new game, okay, and we are already designing a new game that will enable us to do everything on the right-hand side automatically. So that's the beauty of this systems approach. Okay, so you can create a game that enables us to do everything on the right-hand side automatically. Next slide. And so that is about creating abundance on this planet. See, right now we have cut half the trees on this planet. So from 6 trillion trees, the planet now only has 3 trillion trees. And if we bring back the 3 trillion trees that we cut, we can literally reverse climate change. And we can create a world of abundance. In fact, if just 0.2% of the trees are mature almond trees, they can replace the 840 million tons of dairy milk consumed each year with almond milk. Okay, so that is abundance. I mean, to produce the dairy milk, we're using so much of the land area of the planet, but only 0.2% of the trees can do that. So just think about that. So we'll be creating abundance on this planet when we transform. Next slide. And so we are creating a currency called Aquarius, which allows us to automatically do everything on the right-hand side of our transformation. And Aquarius is designed so that we stay within the bounds of the planet and make sure that everyone stays outside the inner hole of the donut. So everyone has their social needs met, and simultaneously we stay within the bounds of the planet. And between the inner circle and the outer circle, we create a market economy. Okay? We create a market economy because that's how we optimize to minimize our resource usage. Okay? So the Aquarius currency uses a multidimensional measure of ecological footprint as the basis of the currency and uses cryptocurrency mechanisms for ensuring that the transactions are done without needing a central authority, a central bank, like a few people who can control how it moves around, right? I mean, it needs to be a distributed currency system. Next slide. And it works in the exact opposite way that the current currency system works. The current currency system is a top-down mechanism. Currency can only be created by a few people, and then the rest of us have to borrow it from them and then give it back to them. Okay? That's how we are running our whole economy. Instead, now currency is going to flow from the bottom up as opposed to top down. Okay? You all get currency in your account. Why? Because you're alive. You're entitled to it. You're alive and you belong on earth. You belong, you are valued exactly as you are. So currency flows into your account, into the heart of your account, and then from there it flows into the heart of the community that you belong to. And it also flows into your pocket that you automatically get to use. So this pocket flow ensures that you stay outside the inner circle. So which means that you automatically have all your social needs met. Okay? Now, between what's in the heart and what's in the pocket, you can create a market mechanism. So this, you can then allow every community to decide how they're going to implement this market mechanism. It has to be distributed. It cannot be something that's imposed from the top down. Okay? So our software is just allowing us to ensure the flow happens and that it is all measured and valued, so that we know that when we implement this economy, we automatically stay within the bounds of the planet and simultaneously make sure that everyone has their basic needs met. Okay, so this automatically implements everything on the right-hand side of the transformation. It's a bottom-up money flow. And it's being worked on right now, okay? So there is a whole team of people who are working on Aquarius. And we've been thinking about this for 4 years now. Next slide. And this only works in an open source economy and ecology. It cannot be done in an economy where everybody holds secrets and then they compete with each other. Because if you're holding secrets and your processes are secret, we don't even know how much pollution you're causing. So we can't account for it. Okay? Whereas in an open source economy and ecology, you basically give away your ideas. Whatever ideas you come up with, it belongs to the community. And you're contributing your ideas. And therefore, we all know how much pollution is caused by every process we implement. And therefore, we can account for it and make sure that we stay within our bounds. Okay? So everything has to be open source in this new model. Next slide. So we have come up with 7 strategic actions to implement to this transformation. First, of course, is education, which is what I'm doing now. Telling people that there is that you are part of the greatest transformation in human history. And you're here at this time to contribute to that. And how are we going to contribute to that? Okay, so that's the education part. Second, we need to see through how we are being manipulated. And one of the main things I want to do is to make the UN drop SDG number 8, which is all about growth, 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 and replace it with SDG 18, which is zero animal exploitation. So if we have that as a goal, zero animal exploitation, automatically all the other goals become easy to meet. Okay. So SDG 18 is Claire Smith of Beyond Animal came up with that. And we want the UN to adopt that instead of 8. Replace 8 with 18. Okay, that's a campaign that I want to start. And then in any project where I've been given 17 goals to meet, I always pick one goal and say, let's meet that first. Okay? Let's meet that and be honest about it. And once we meet that, then we feel good that we are actually making progress. And then we start meeting the other goals. Okay, that's how every project works. So I say, let's pick goal number 2, SDG 2, which is zero hunger. And let's meet that. So let's meet that with healthy food, healthy immune boosting vegan food, easily available to every human being on this planet. Can we not do that? We have plenty of food on this planet, except half of it is being fed to our animals. And then people are fighting over the animal foods. So if we just take the food and directly feed people, there's plenty of food on this planet. So let's create a vegan utopia where everyone gets vegan food easily available to them. Okay? So that's initiative number 3, action number 3. Action number 4, we need to create a new constitution that's all about healing the planet, as opposed to the current constitution and the current constitutions around the world, which is all about extracting from the planet. Okay, so let's create a new one to heal the planet. Let's work on this new open source economy game, Aquarius, because ultimately we play games and we tell stories, and this is how we coordinate our actions among millions and billions of us. The idea of rupee is a story, right? And we play the game of rupees. Who has how much rupees? Or the idea of India is a nation. That's a story we are telling. In the same way, we can create a new open source economy game based on Aquarius. We need to come up with a common spiritual initiative. We need to get the religions of the world to come together so that we can create this grassroots movement for this transformation from the caterpillar to the butterfly. We are all talking about the same thing, compassion for all life. Okay, that's what every religion is talking about. So why are we fighting among each other? We need to come together to make this happen. And finally, we need to create a new ecology of food forests everywhere. So we don't have to have people go and till the land every day and every year to create food. Let forests create food for us. And we can just go and gather as opposed to do agriculture. Okay, next slide. So the 3 things I say every person can do starting today is go vegan, go as organic as possible and as local as possible. So local, organic, vegan eating. That is love for the planet. That's love for your body. That's love for your community. That's love for the planet. Okay. So that's the number 1 thing I ask people to do. Next slide. The number 2 thing I ask people to do is to become a conscious consumer. Know that everything you consume has an impact on the planet. And what I do a buy everything day as opposed to a buy nothing day. So meaning I don't buy anything on any other day except one day a year where I go buy everything I need for the next year. And typically that just involves buying toothbrushes, and toothpaste, and that's about it. Okay. And usually the other days of the year, I just make a list as to what I need to buy. And that makes you immune to advertisements, to Google telling you what to get, and so on and so forth. Okay? And so you become a conscious consumer because you've said, I'm only going to buy once a year. And then usually what happens is, to me, on that day, I look at my list and I cross out things I really don't need. Because even the things that I thought I needed, I really don't need. And so I buy less and less. Next slide. And the third thing is to join a community and contribute. Because you're part of the greatest transformation in human history, and it is not a spectator sport. You have to be part of it. You have to activate yourself. So we meet every quarter in January, April, July, and October. We have quarterly convergences, and our goal is to get to a vegan world by 2026. Okay, so that's the project we work on. And you can find out more information at climatehealers.org/VW2026. And I'm presenting to you because I love every community that is working towards this objective. And I like to support them because I feel like if every community that's working towards this objective is successful beyond their wildest dreams, we'll have a vegan world. So it's my job to help you become successful at what you do. Next slide. And so this is my boss, my granddaughter. She's been my boss ever since she was born 10 years ago. And she's the inspiration behind Vegan World 2026. And she thanks all of you for the work that you do. And I report to her, actually, as the progress I'm making. And because she has told me it's my job to get to a vegan world by 2026. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for such an incredible and enlightening session, sir. throughout the session, I was just totally awestruck by your ability to communicate such complicated topics. It was so entertaining throughout. So I would like to ask you some questions right now. So basically, what you said about making shift, cultural and civilization shift. So, what are the exact steps we need to take to facilitate the cultural and civilizations shift? Like you talk about the game of money and capitalism. So, I mean, how structurally we approach that situation to actually break it down in a actionable steps to
Right.
dismantling that structure of model, that economy model that we are following.
Yeah, I'd say don't focus on dismantling the old,
Okay.
build the new. Focus on building the new. Okay, when you build the new and you have enough people playing the new game, the old will dismantle by itself because it'll fall into disrepute and no one will want to
It will
do
become obsolete.
it will become obsolete. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly what Buckminster Fuller said, right? So I focus on building the new because it's also not right to ask the old to be dismantled before you have the new ready.
Yeah, you have the alternate. Yeah, that's the problem. Yeah.
Yeah. So we need to build this new game. So we have to now recruit corporations to join us, vegan companies to join us and say, show us your processes so we understand exactly how you're doing it so that we can make sure that we stay within the bounds of the planet. Okay. If vegan companies also say our processes are secret, I'm not going to tell you what I'm doing, then we are in the same old model. We are trying to do vegan consumerism, right? So it has to be an open source economy and ecology in which we are open about what we are doing so we can measure each other's impact and make sure that we stay within our bounds. So we need to create this Aquarius model. We need to recruit companies to join us. And we need to then get more and more people playing the Aquarius game. Right?
Yeah. So there's one more question that I have for you, that you were talking about changing the paradigm. So we are basically, this model of economy is sustaining or being beneficial for very few people. So how do we integrate this knowledge that now we are able to understand as a privileged person, I would say, to the people who are actually bottom of the hierarchy, so poor people who are being taken advantage of? So how
Right.
do we change the currency paradigm in the sense that they understand that they have to not let themselves get exploited that way?
Right. Right now, they are being exploited and they have no choice but to get exploited because it's not that they want to be exploited. It's just, they get suckered into it, right? It's a process. So we need to then create this new model and then get more and more of them to join us, as in creating food for us. And then we support them by making sure that they have food available. So with the resources that we have available to us, we should be creating this food security for the people who join us. Okay. So then Aquarius starts becoming worthwhile for people to join. Okay. So we are creating a new game and we have to bootstrap that game using the old resources from the old. And that's the idea behind those actions, like the solving SDG 2 first. When people get healthy food, then they can think clearly. If they are getting unhealthy food full of toxins, especially animal foods are full of toxins because the animals concentrate the toxins in their bodies. And all the chemical pollution we have poured into the environment is being absorbed by plants and it's everywhere, right? So the animals eat the plants and they're getting more and more, their bodies are getting more and more toxic. And then we eat them, so we get more and more toxic. And then we're not able to think clearly when we do that. So it's gathering momentum with smaller communities and then growing that, with the new model and the new game. So that's how the butterfly is born from the caterpillar.
So there's also very, like, I guess you addressed it, but I still want to ask you, like, what are the immediate action that we can take right now as individual so that it will have maximum impact in the future? Like you talked about going vegan and being a conscious consumer, but what further we can do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then I say to people, evaluate your gifts. How can you help the movement grow with your gifts? Maybe you're an artist, so you can write songs and sing about it and make YouTube videos. Everything you do matters. Everything you do matters. And so to me, veganism is just like you can model it just like an infectious, it's an infectious movement that has to grow exponentially. Okay. And we know how infections can grow exponentially. We have experienced that now, right? So it is about, rather than doing social distancing, you need to do social undistancing. You need to be more and more socially active as a vegan to help others see why they need to be vegan as well. Okay, so I'd say it is, rather than infecting, it's actually inspiring more and more people to be vegan. Okay? So, and everything you can do to help the movement grow, you're part of it. You're part of the transformation. Just by being vegan, you're part of the transformation. Okay, so you're helping others see the benefit of this. But the more you can help the vegan movement grow, the faster it'll happen.
That's great, sir. You answer all the questions beautifully. I also would like to ask somebody in the audience if they have any further questions. You can ask Dr. Sailesh Rao right now.
All right, I will read out for Sarvani. So, sir, Sarvani is asking, we would love to know more about your granddaughter, and we would love really to know if she was raised as a vegan, and yeah, if we could get some suggestions on how we could do the same. So, because she seems like a true inspirer and important part of this session, so definitely would like to learn more about that.
Yeah, she's been, as I said, she's been an inspiration in my life. She was born in 2010. And when she was born, I was probably one of the most depressed environmentalists on the planet. Because I thought we were going to hell in a handbasket. There's nothing I could do as a human being to reverse this. And I thought, in nature, every species just lives and nature thrives. Human beings just live and nature dies. So I thought that we are the only species that's a mistake. We were a mistake on the planet. Okay? Take human beings out and the planet will be fine. So I reached that conclusion. And I thought we were the only mistake. Okay, nature made a mistake. And then when she was born, I went to see her when she was a month old. And I held her in my arms for the first time, and she looked up at me and she smiled. And she had this, it was a knowing smile. I felt like she was telling me, what do you mean I don't belong? I belong exactly as I am. I am perfect like anybody else. And immediately, it hit me. My God, we must belong exactly as we are. And we're not telling the right story. Because, in nature, you see an elephant that's breaking branches of trees and you think, oh, the elephant is being destructive. But no. You look closely, you will see that wherever the elephant broke branches of trees, that's where the sunlight streams and nourishes the underbrush. Okay? Where the branches that the elephant threw out, that's where insects live. Okay? It becomes home for lots of insects.
There is no error in the nature. Like everything is perfect.
Everything is perfect.
Yeah.
Nature is the perfect system design ever. Okay. As a systems engineer, I'm in awe of nature. So I realized that we must belong exactly as we are and that we are not telling the right story. Then I started looking for that story. What is this story? What were we doing all along? Just like the elephant, when it breaks branches of trees, you can come up with an explanation for what we were doing. What was the elephant doing? So then, I realized it took me 5 years to figure this out. but it was staring at me in the face all along. I was so stupid, I didn't see it. Because once you acknowledge that we are changing the climate of the planet, we automatically are the climate regulators of the planet. So nature did something amazing with us. She said, I don't want any more ice ages. I'm going to create a species that will get me out of it. And she did. So this warm period, we didn't go back to an ice age because of what we did. We actually unknowingly prevented an ice age from happening by burning down forests. And now we have to become conscious as the climate regulator species. We need to assume our responsibilities. It can no longer be done automatically. Okay, we need to become conscious as a climate regulator species. So that was the story that I came up with after 5 years of research. But all along, it was staring at me in the face, as you can see. So she has been raised vegan, and she has been, when she was 2 or 3 years old, I told her she's the most amazing thing that ever happened to me. And it sort of, she realized that, okay? And I also told her that I will always love her and that I will never, ever lie to her. No matter what, I'll never lie to her. So she used that. So she knew that she could ask me any question and I'll tell her the truth. So she asked me about Santa Claus. She asked me about Easter Bunny. She asked me about all these lies that the children are told. And she got, she was disillusioned of all of those, okay, very quickly. So then one day I was reading her a story in bed. And it was Ruby Roth's story. That's why we don't eat animals. And it was my job to put her to bed. And she was 5 years old at that time. She was going to kindergarten. At the end of the story, she asked me, so Grandpa, who are the first human beings? And she knew I will never lie to her. So I told her, okay, I'm going to explain to you how evolution works. It's called the theory of evolution. So the best that we know is, if you stand on the street and you hold your mama by your hand and you ask your mama to bring her mama to stand by her side and so on, you create a long line of mothers on this side of the street. And on the other side of the street, you ask a chimpanzee to do the same thing with her mother and her grandmother and so on. By the time these two lines go from Phoenix to Tucson, they will merge because both lines are going to say, hey, that's my mama too. Immediately, she just sat up in bed. She said, what? Are you telling me that animals are my family? And I said, yeah, now that you put it that way, they are your family. And she said, then why are people eating my family? Grandpa, make them stop. They're eating my family. And she started bawling. She was telling me names of people she knows who are eating her family. And, my job was to put her to bed. And this baby was now crying. So I was trying to console her, and she was really literally ripping my heart out of my chest because I realized I created a world full of monsters for my granddaughter. So I told her, Kimaya, this is what I do. In fact, it's my job to make them stop. Okay? This is what I've been doing. This is what I've been doing for the last 10 years. And she said, this is your job? This is your job? You haven't done your job. So when will you do your job? And at that point, I had calculated that we are on track to wipe out almost all wildlife by 2026. So I told her I better do my job by 2026, otherwise we are all in big trouble. And she said, will you promise me that? I said, okay, I'll promise you that. She said, will you give me a pinky promise? And I had no idea what it meant. So, okay, I'll give you a pinky promise. She said, okay, hold out your pinky. And I did. And she locked her pinky into mine and she said, you can never, ever break a pinky promise. And then she went to sleep. Put her head on my shoulders and went to sleep. And I couldn't sleep because I realized I had made a very serious promise to a young kid. I better figure out how to keep it. And I finally dozed off, and I woke up in the morning realizing that I'm a systems engineer. Damn it. I should know how to do this. It's my job to figure this out. So that's when I started the Vegan World 2026 project. And so, as you can see, she has been a great influence on my life. And I think through our projects, she's going to influence the whole world.
It's a beautiful relationship you have with your granddaughter. Like, I just want to meet her personally with the vibe you're giving off talking about her.
See, for me, she's half Indian because my wife and I are both Indian. Our son is Indian. I mean, obviously. She's half Indian, but her mother is half African American and half American Indian.
Oh.
So when I saw her for the first time, I saw all continents in her. I saw all of humanity in her. Because it's like every part of humanity has come together in this one little creature, right? One little girl. And so that was, my first, I was really felt like I was holding humanity in my arms. And humanity was telling me, hey, I belong, So anyway, yeah, she's now 10 years old. And she's been vegan. She's actually sung. She's been dancing in music videos and things like that. I don't know. I can show you. I can send you a link to her videos.
Sure.
Definitely. I guess this could go all night long. We are not wanting to let you go anymore. We want to hear more and more about it. So yeah,
I love you guys. Thank you so much.
Question here that I had. Since I am a non-vegan, I will just confess that. And there is something that came to my mind right now, that from the very beginning, from the very Stone Age, when we started discovering what exactly is food. So the form of food that we consumed was non-vegan only in the very beginning. And over the ages, I believe that we have evolved, we have learned how to cook, we have learned how to do the farming and everything. But even now, we have cities and states to be very clear that whose livelihood depend on the fishermen whose livelihood completely depend upon that. I'm not talking about the giants like McDonald's or something, or KFC, who are who could recover the damage or something. But those who have been doing fishing, who have been fishermen for generations, can we instead come up, because I believe veganism is something which is a slow and gradual change, and instead of forcing a complete veganism, we can have some 70-30 rule, or decreasing, or some pound sharing rule, and over the years we can keep decreasing it and keep a balance in the nature. So I just want to know your thoughts about that.
Yeah, in the current model, okay, the fisherman is told, if you don't go fish, you are going to starve to death. So this is how the model forces people to do things they really don't want to do. I mean, why would someone want to work in a slaughterhouse? It's one of the worst jobs in the world, right? So how do you force people to do things they don't want to do? Well, starve them. That's the current model. Okay? So this is why in our actions, we are saying, number one thing we need to do as vegans is to make sure that everybody has access to healthy vegan food. Go to your temples, go to your mosques, go to your churches, have them prepare vegan food and make it available to anyone in the community to come and eat. As soon as you do that, you will see a lot of people who are currently doing things in order to survive will stop doing those things because they have an option. They can live, right? And so now you're changing the model, because what happened to us is, I really believe that nature is a perfect system design. When we originally were living in Africa as a species, okay, there was plenty of fruits, there was plenty of nuts and seeds. There was no need to go after an animal to eat the animal. You can't even, look at our fingers. Can you really scratch an animal with your fingers? We don't have claws. We don't have sharp teeth. We can't even run too fast. We can't even climb trees too well. So we were actually a prey species to begin with. We were easy to catch for the predators. So, and we could live off the fruits and nuts and seeds and grains that were growing there on the ground, right? So we were primarily vegan to begin with. But in order to allow us to spread throughout the world, in order to create this thermostat for the planet, okay, we were given access to fire, the control of fire. And with the control of fire, you're now able to cook. Because without cooking, you cannot eat meat. It's disgusting to eat raw flesh, you know. So you needed to be able to control fire before you can actually even eat meat. So, you know, and who are the ones who needed to really eat meat? The ones who went to climates that were really cold. Okay, the people in Europe and North America, they had to hunt animals. The rest of us, people in India, hey, this is why our major food is, you know, dal chawal and roti sabji and idli sambar. Okay, we were thriving on vegan food all along because there is plenty for us to eat. You don't have to go catch an animal to eat that. Whereas the Europeans had to do it. So now the Europeans colonized the rest of the world. Why? Because they constantly were improving their war-making capabilities. They could conquer other nations. Whereas those of us who are comfortable said, hey, we don't need to spend time figuring out how to kill each other. We can live happily among us because there's plenty to eat. Okay? So that is how Europeans colonized the rest of the world, because they had the military capabilities to colonize the rest of the world. And now the whole world is colonized. The whole world is European. And everyone is trying to eat like European nobles. Or European kings, actually. I mean, it's only the kings who used to eat meat every day, you know. Now everyone wants to be a king, right? It's about going back and saying, oh, let's eat our traditional foods. Dal chawal, roti sabji. It's perfectly healthy, is good for you, and the whole planet will thrive when we go back to it. Okay? So it's about getting the Europeans, waking them up and saying, hey, listen, dude, you know, stop muscling around. You're not as important as you think. Okay, so just let it go. We all have to thrive on this planet. And so start eating roti sabji, dal chawal. Let's have some idli sambar together. Okay, so and bringing them, start, you know, helping them understand that there is a better way of living without exploiting each other. Okay, so this is why I say, you know, right now we are being forced to eat meat. You know, if you think about schools in the West, in Europe and all that, you know, in the US, schools, if you're going to a public school, they force you to drink milk. You have to finish that milk as a child. Why do they do that? Because they are being indoctrinated into the colonial system. Okay, and so now if you go and say, hey, let's have some vegan food easily available to everybody, they say, oh, you're forcing veganism on people. Excuse me. We are asking for vegan default. That's all we are asking. Make sure that everybody has access to vegan food. Yeah, and healthy vegan food.
Today you have touched many hearts. I mean, I personally am trying to be vegan, and like today it's another kind of spark in me. Like what you have told, like your granddaughter is a vegan since birth, like she is. So that is the biggest myth breaker, that kids need milk.
No, they don't.
Yeah, like anything.
Yeah.
And we can listen to you. I have been fan of yours from now on. Everyone over our Zoom, the number of contestants were also fixed. They weren't able to move their eyes. Your PPT, the way you were explaining it was amazing. Thank you so much. We are blessed to have you.
Thank you, Vanchika.
Sir, we believe that your story has given us a new start, a new perspective of how life is. So I would like to just ask very few small things from you on a personal note. I believe all of life as it is interrelated, and so is every other abstract concept that we've built around it, like politics and environment. They're intermittently related. So as you pointed out, the colonialism as a structure has mandated for us that money is this from top down is the system that will flow. So does the Aquarius currency mandate that some sort of a communism or a socialism need to be instated as a political system so that welfare and मतलब किसी की जान पे नहीं आ रही है if they're not killing animals as their daily livelihood, considering the native communities in Bengal and other island countries in the world. So does it mandate a communist regime somehow?
Well, it basically says that we have an impact on the planet and we need to measure it and make sure that we stay within the bounds. Okay, that's what Aquarius is doing. And it's saying, okay, if you don't want to be part of Aquarius, just tell us what your impact is, because we need to account for it. So, yeah, you don't. If you want to do your own colonial little mafia, and you're convinced enough people to follow you, fine, go do it. But tell us what your impact is, because we need to account for it as in Aquarius. Okay, that's all. So there has to be minimum agreement between human beings because we share a planet. Okay, that we have an impact on each other, we have an impact on the environment, and therefore we need to understand what that impact is. How much pollution are we putting into the environment? How many trees are we cutting? Maybe we can say, look, my impact is very minimal, and we could probably measure that and say, yeah, you're right. So then go off. It's okay. It doesn't matter. We can account for it. But if you're coming up with novel, rockets that take you to the moon and back and stuff like that, you're having an impact. You're taking it from here, okay, to do that. So we need to account for it. So I'm not saying it will be an imposition of Aquarius on everybody, but it's an accounting mechanism for everybody. That's what we're building, okay? And then within that, you can have different ways of distributing things. And so all we are doing is creating a framework and a mechanism for ensuring that we stay within the bounds of the planet. So we lead our ordinary lives, and the planet must thrive. If we don't get there, there is no sustainability, period. Okay? It's a joke if you're not doing that. So that's all we're trying to get to. And I'm doing it as an engineer would. Okay? Because we are on spaceship Earth. Okay? And when you wanted to send a spaceship to the moon or to Mars, you didn't go ask a politician to do it. You didn't go ask a lawyer to figure out how to do that. No, you went and asked an engineer. Did we not? I mean, NASA is full of engineers. So why on spaceship Earth suddenly it's politicians who know the best way to do it? What the heck? They don't have they have no clue how to solve engineering problems.
So this is totally a new perspective that the Earth is itself a safe spaceship. And as we've all understood from this session, that what binds us is our need to belong here to common in this planet. And as I believe, we are here on rent. It's not our thing to just go about siphoning every single resource we have for whatever we want to do.
Even calling it a resource, right? Even calling it a resource is a mindset. I mean, this is why I say need to change from speciesism, colonialism, racism, ableism, and patriarchy, the domination, oppression paradigm, to ahimsa and sacred relationships paradigm. We are here to serve. We are here to serve the earth. Okay, how can I serve? That should be the motive. And then suddenly you will see when Kimaya was growing up, okay, when we used to go to this community kitchen, which is where free vegan food is available to everybody. Okay, it's a pay as you can. It's not free. Pay as you can is what they said. And the idea there was the people who were cooking the food were giving it away and saying, okay, this is our way of marketing our business. Okay, that's how they were doing it. But they said, in return, please make sure that everything is cleaned, dishes are cleaned, and there is some collections for at least the cost is met and so on, right? So every week we went there. The place was always cleaned at the end. Dishes were all clean. The tables were all, the floor was mopped. The floor was swept. The chairs were put on the tables at the end, and everyone left. And I didn't have to go pay anyone $15 an hour to do it. People did it voluntarily. Okay. And what I found fascinating was that this little girl, who was 3 years old, was throwing a tantrum because she couldn't mop the floor. She wanted to mop the floor. And I think, look at this girl. I mean, she desperately wants to contribute. Because everyone wants to contribute in order to belong. Okay?
Yeah, that's what I was about to say, that as we contribute, we actually belong to a community, belong to a, you find your place, so you find your purpose. Yeah, that's very important.
Yeah. Then we taught her how to clean the spoons, and she was doing that, so, but I eventually she became the one who was mopping the floor. She wanted to do it. So you can't stop her. So anyway, it's a different mechanism. Okay, it's a different mechanism for creating economic activity. And I think I don't think we can even call it communism, because it still is. It's telling people you belong to start with. That's all. That it's a love-based system as opposed to a fear-based system.
Like coming to a mutual aid or a mutual, basically forming a system where actually we are helping each other out as people. Yeah. Rather than trying to conquer each other or compete with each other.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Trying to show who's better at who. This is the kind of games we play today, right? Who's the best batsman of all? I mean, who the hell cares?
We're all going to die anyway, so it's not going to outlast our life. At least.
Even the best batsman is going to get old and his eyesight is going to fail, and so he won't be a best batsman anymore, right? So then we keep finding who's the best batsman now. Anyway, that's just a distraction from what needs to happen. Now, you notice the reason they pump up the best batsmen and so on is that they can then sell goods to you.
Yes, that's true.
So they become the marketers. So they are also being manipulated by the colonial system. We're all being manipulated by the colonial system.
I feel like
I just wanted to sir, I just wanted to thank you because my parents were also present here during the event, and they were literally listening it very carefully, and right now they just told me that sachi aisa bhi kuch hota hai, like there is something like this that exists, vegan thing and all. So they were literally very much happy, and after listening this, and I'm sure they are going to follow this because they are very happy, and they are right now on a call discussing all this with someone. So sir, thank you so much.
My pleasure. There is more information on climatehealers.org. So everything I do is open source. Everything I put on the website, so you can just browse through it. There's a lot more information. And we have weekly meetings. You can sign up for our newsletters. You can join our weekly meetings. We have it twice, one in the morning, one in the evening, so that anyone from anywhere in the world can join at least one of the meetings.
Yes, so thank you so much for today's session. I mean, like me being a full-fledged vegan myself, like I found everything you said so inspiring, and it just, further enforced me to stay on my path, and it just further enforced whatever I very strongly feel already. So you're like a great inspiration. It was really, really amazing, and I feel so honored to be in your presence and hear you talk. And really, I love your granddaughter. Like, it was such a sweet story that you were saying, and we could literally see your face glowing when you're talking about her. So you can really see how much you love her, and she's herself is a huge inspiration to all of us. So thank you so much for coming on here, sir. Like, it was really great.
Wonderful. Thank you.
So if there is no more question, I just sincerely thank you on behalf of Swadhyay, Tears of the Earth, for taking out your time. And just making up time for this beautiful interaction that we had today. And we will be definitely contacting and engaging with you in future as well, because we couldn't just get enough of you. And you.
Anytime.
Thank
Let me
you.
know.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, on.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, he's such a sweet person.
Recording
All
stop.
the session was so
Recording
good.
stop.
Stop the recording एक बार.
Okay. Yeah.
I think only Avnish can stop.